Aloha and welcome back to our series of lectures on child development. Today we are going to study some different age groups, and we're going to put them into some categories so that we can kind of examine the different behaviors of children that are in certain age groups. All right, so we're going to start here with toddlers, and the age group that we're looking at is from 12 to 36 months, so 1 to 3 years old. And we can see here from the images on the slide that during this time, children become much more mobile. And they can get into a whole lot more trouble because they can climb, they can get into spaces that they're not supposed to be getting into. And so safety becomes a very major factor that nurses must spend time teaching all of our families that are coming in for well child visits into the clinic. So it's called anticipatory guidance. And we're going to talk a little bit about it during the lecture today. But anticipatory guidance, it kind of means what it sounds like. We're anticipating changes that are going to be taking place as the child's growing and developing. We want to teach the parents about what to expect, what kind of safety measures they need to put into place, and what they need to be concerned about in terms of their child's safety. This is a pretty usual scene if you leave a child alone in a bathroom at this age. We can see that they have had a good old time with the toilet and the water and the toilet paper and all the toys, and they are just living it up. And you know, there were several times in my own mothering experience where I would walk into something like this and I would just laugh because it's fun to watch them grow and be curious and sometimes get a mess going on, knowing full well that they did not mean any harm whatsoever. They're just there to be curious and explore and learn. And so we're going to talk a little bit today about how to encourage children to explore safely, of course, but then on the other hand, how to deal with some of the more difficult moments like these. We know that toddlers between 1 and 3, they like to throw temper tantrums, and there's a very good reason for that. It has to do with the developmental stage of becoming more independent and wanting to exert their own will in the world. And so in terms of growth, toddlers will grow about 2.5 inches per year during these years. Their weight will increase anywhere from 5 to 7 pounds per year during these years. And they have this broad stance and gait, and they have this cute little protruding abdomen, and their little arms kind of hang out to the side for balance, and that's why we call them toddlers. And they just kind of toddle around. Sometimes they fall down, and they're just about as adorable as can be. Toddlers really do begin imaginative and make-believe play. They like to dress up. They like to explore different ways of mimicking what they see adults doing, playing with pots and pans in the kitchen, pretending like they're cooking, this kind of thing. Something that's interesting, though, about children at this stage is that they are often engaged in play on their own. And so it's kind of cute. You'll hear about the neighborhood moms getting together. They're getting all their 2-year-olds together for a play date. And so they all come together at someone's house. And then they notice that the children are playing like this. They think that the kids are going to engage and they're going to play together, but actually at this stage of development, parallel play is the most consistent type of play that a child will engage in. So they like to play with toys, like those that the children around them are using, but they're usually absorbed in their own activity, and they usually play beside rather than with one another. So this is known as parallel play. And this is, again, very consistent with this developmental period, ages 1 to 3. Toddlers are also known for very ritualistic behavior. They need a reliable schedule to promote comfort. Sometimes they will be referred to as picky eaters. They have even ritualistic eating habits. And some of this has to do with that idea of them learning that they have choices, right? And that they can exert their will on the world with, no, I won't eat that, or yes, that's the only thing I will eat. We want to limit their milk to about 32 ounces per day to avoid any kind of iron deficiencies, because if given the choice, oftentimes at this age, they will drink lots of milk and lots of juice, but they're not necessarily going to be, if they are a picky eater, eating lots of different types of foods. And so we want to make sure that we're limiting the milk, hopefully to get them hungry so that we can get them to eat food that has all the vitamins and minerals that we need and the good protein to keep them growing. And so this can be frustrating for parents when the child will, only eat macaroni and cheese or only eat this or that. I think it's important, though, that we teach parents that these are all phases that are very quick, right? We blink an eye and they've grown out of the phase. And so allowing them to make choices is an important part of them developing. And so one thing that might be good to teach parents for children during this age, would you like to wear your blue shirt or your red shirt, right? So you're giving them a choice, but it's between two things, right? Another example would be, would you like to have, a macaroni and cheese, or would you like to have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? These are your choices. You decide. So then you're still giving them that choice, but you're not overwhelming them with too many choices, because that can cause them to feel frustrated, okay? So in terms of Piaget, he teaches us that during this period, it's referred to as the pre-operational stage. And remember, Piaget's focus was on cognitive development. So this begins about the time the child begins to talk. And what Piaget learned, and what we can all clearly see in children around this age, is that their thinking is very influenced by fantasy. They kind of see the world the way that they'd like the world to be. That's how they see the world. And they assume that other people see things from their point of view. They don't really understand that mom's point of view is that it is time for your nap, when your point of view is that it is time to, play. And so this is very normal, and it's something that changes, again, very quickly as they grow. But at the pre-operational stage, they're really taking in information, and then they're kind of changing it in their mind to fit their own ideas. And so, trying to treat children as though they're little adults and that they should be able to rationalize and understand and think the way that we do, it doesn't work very well. Because again, they are taking in information, they hear you, but they're changing it to kind of fit their own ideas. And they really kind of think the world revolves around them. And so, although, again, this can be frustrating for parents, it's important for us to allow them to explore and exert their will, but teach them impulse control. And of course, we always want to make sure that they are not impinging on the rights of others as they are exerting their will. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. So Erikson, he is our psychosocial development theorist, and he says that during this stage there is more independence, and he calls this stage autonomy versus a sense of shame and doubt. So the idea here is that during this stage, the child will learn to be autonomous, gain autonomy, versus falling in to this idea that they should be ashamed of their behavior and feeling doubtful about the ability to trust people in the world and trust themselves. So we know that they're more independent now. They can feed themselves, they're walking, they're climbing, they're talking, they're developing autonomy by making choices about their relationships, who their friends are, what their desires are, what types of toys they like to play with, and of course what they eat, and whether or not they want to obey when their parents try to get them to do something. Potty training is a very big milestone during this stage. And, this sense of autonomy certainly will grow out of mastering your own ability to go to the bathroom, okay? And again, this happens for children during different stages in terms of this age. So we're saying from 1 to 3, right? There are plenty of 3-year-olds that are not fully potty trained, and that's okay. Every child will get there when they're ready to get there. And so we want to make sure we're encouraging the moms that are coming into the clinic for just child checks, that when we ask about potty training, if the child is not potty trained yet, we can find out what they're trying to do to promote it. And we can give them a sense of assurance that as long as they're encouraging the child to use the potty and they're doing it in a very positive way, that they're on the right track, right? Because excessive limiting of choices and or harsh punishment really lead to feelings of shame and doubt. So we really want to promote that sense of autonomy, and we really want to have the goal of this stage to be for the child to learn some self-control and some willpower. Not fully, because we're still talking about 3-year-olds here, but nurses help families through teaching. So the more we can understand about these developmental stages, and the more parents will come in and describe different behaviors and different things that the family is maybe struggling with, the more light that the nurse may be able to shed on the situation, provide them with handouts, provide them with resources to help them understand that this is all a normal part of growing up. Dealing with temper tantrums. Not fun. I was recently at the beach, and I noticed all around me there were quite a few toddlers, and quite a few of them were throwing temper tantrums. It was really interesting to observe all the different ways that the parents were responding to it. Some parents just kind of hover over the child and try to convince them to stop crying, that everything's okay and there's no reason for you to be crying. And other parents will harshly discipline the child by perhaps grabbing them, speaking to them in a very negative tone to stop what it is they're doing. And other parents will just simply walk away from the child, which I did that quite frequently when my children were doing it. Although it's funny, now that my triplets are 11, when I'm on the beach and I see all these little toddlers throwing temper tantrums, I think to myself, I don't remember my kids ever doing that. And it's funny because I'm sure that they did. I either blocked it out or, we kind of didn't really celebrate it much. So in other words, we were very consistent with having a daily routine. That helps with temper tantrums. Planning ahead also helps. For example, running errands when they're least likely to be hungry or tired, and encouraging them to use their words, all right? So an emotional outburst from a child at this age can often be because they don't quite have the words to express how they're feeling. So one of the things that you'll see happen in a lot of preschools is you will hear the preschool teacher say to the child, use your words, use your words. So when the child is getting frustrated and agitated, we try to calm them down and we say, tell us how you're feeling. Use your words to let us know what's happening, rather than crying and yelling and that type of thing. So these are just some of the ways that we can work on or work through this stage of development. Letting them make choices and praising good behavior. Offering extra attention when the child behaves well. It's so easy for us to not like a behavior, all right? And let the child clearly know that we do not like the behavior that they are exhibiting. We're really good at that. We're really good at that. What we need to get better at is praising the child when they behave exactly the way that we want them to behave. Respectful, quiet, kind, helpful. Any of these behaviors need a maximum amount of praise, and you will see more of those behaviors, okay? And so it's not, totally unreasonable to walk away from a child who is throwing a big temper tantrum rather than entertain the behavior in any way. And so I used to do something, I would call it giving myself a timeout when one of my three would go into this mode. And I would just, as long as they were safe, I would walk away. I would remove myself from their presence to show that if they were going to be that way, that I wasn't going to hang out with them. So we want to use distractions to change their focus if we can. And we want to avoid situations that are likely to trigger tantrums. And I'll give you an example. If cookies cause temper tantrums because they want a cookie before dinner, let's put the cookies away in the cupboard where they cannot see them until after dinner, and then we can get the cookies out. If the trigger is within view of the child, they're much more likely to point at it and insist that they must have it. So again, these are all things that we want to try to teach families to help have a more peaceful home. Toddler home safety. So with all these new skills, we've got to consider access to stairways We've got to consider access to balconies and lanais that are up on the second floor, and make sure that we're using gates in proper locations to keep children from getting into spaces that can be dangerous for them. We also want to make sure that we're teaching families to store medications, cleaning supplies, and garage items out of reach because they're able to climb at this point. And so locking cabinets, I've even known families to have to lock the refrigerator door so that the kids cannot get into it. This is very important because you know, these items can be very dangerous if the kids get their hands on them and take any medications that they're not supposed to take or get into any caustic substances that are toxic. So we want to keep potential poisons out of sight and out of reach. We always want to re-engage the child-resistant closures and keep them in the locked mode immediately after using a pharmaceutical or consumer product that has a locked lid. Never transfer a substance from its original to an alternate container. And an example of this would be, you know, something like, well, we closed the pool down for summer and we had to use the, when you close down, I guess this is more relevant in colder climates where they close the pool down. They put antifreeze in the swimming pool over the summer, or I'm sorry, over the winter so that the pool doesn't freeze. And sometimes there'll be leftover antifreeze. And if you put something like that in a Gatorade container, because you don't want to keep the whole big jug of antifreeze in the garage, then you have a child now who might see this plastic bottle with this bright yellow or bright orange substance in it that looks quite a bit like Gatorade, and they might try to get up there and get their hands on it. So I have to think about things like that when we've got toddlers around. Safely dispose of all unused and no longer needed medications. There are ways now that through our physician's offices, through Kaiser, that we can safely dispose of medications by taking them back to those places for proper disposal. And never refer to medication as candy. Never, never, never. Now, I know when I was growing up, to encourage us to take our medicine, they would say, but it tastes just like bubble gum. It's bubble gum flavored. Now, here's the thing. Once we convince the child that the medicine tastes like bubble gum, then they're going to want to get their hands on it at all costs. And so as nurses, we never want to refer to medication as candy or as anything that tastes like candy, because that is a very unsafe thing to teach a child. We want to post the Poison Control Center number near the telephone, and I think there's a universal number here. Hopefully this is still an accurate phone number where the call can be routed to your local Poison Control Center in the unfortunate event that a child might get their hands on something and drink it or eat it. So this is just something that I learned in nursing school. This is called syrup of Ipecac, and back in the day, families used to keep this in the medicine cabinet so that if a child ingested something that was toxic, a bottle of Tylenol, cough medicine, whatever, that you would give them the syrup of Ipecac and it would induce vomiting so that we could get it out of their body as quickly as possible. The American Academy of Pediatrics no longer recommends keeping this in the home for many reasons, one of which, though, is that whatever they may have ingested may cause more damage coming back up to their esophagus than it did going down. And so taking them to the nearest emergency room and possibly there's different possibilities. They could drink activated charcoal, depending on what they ingested, to bind whatever it is so that they can just poop it out in their stool. Or in some cases, they may need to actually put a tube down and pump it out, whatever it is. And so syrup of ipecac is no longer used. When my little sister was a toddler, we found her in the bathroom with an empty bottle of cough medicine. And my mother pretty much panicked and grabbed her and started running down the street with her. I'm like, where are you going? Get in the car. We're going to the ER. And, this little 3-year-old had a choice. She could either drink the black activated charcoal, which was very strange, right? It's this black, fluid that's kind of viscous. Or she could have her stomach pumped by putting a gavage tube probably, down her nose into her stomach. And fortunately, she chose to drink she chose to drink the activated charcoal. So we got out of that one without having to actually put the tube down her stomach. So these are just the things that happen in life. So preschoolers, 3 to 6 years old, this is the next stage. So we just got finished talking about 1 to 3-year-olds. Now we're going to start talking about the 3 to 6-year-olds. These are our preschoolers. And their height, again, increases about 2 to 5 to 3 inches a year. Weight increases about 5 pounds per year. And something happens to their bodies. Their bodies change, right? So remember, we looked at the image of the toddler with their little pot belly and their cute little arms out to the side. Here we see more of an elongation of the legs, resulting in a more slender appearance. The child starts looking less like a toddler and more like what we consider a little kid to look like. Preschoolers will participate in more associative play. This is a form of play in which a group of children will participate in similar or identical activities without real formal organization, group direction, but they'll have, a group interaction. They might not have a definite goal, but they're just kind of playing a game together that they make up, or that they're just kind of doing these games where they do their hand clapping. And this is associative play, so they're engaging with each other. Erikson teaches us that children in this stage of development, psychosocially, are in a stage called initiative versus guilt, right? And so they're going to be attempting new tasks. They're going to be using new skills during playtime with others and initiating new experiences. And so it's really important for them to be able to initiate the newness of the things that they're able to do now, this new skill sets that are coming in, initiate things and experience success, right? But sometimes they don't, right? Children often have to try things several times before they learn how to do it. Same thing for many of us. And so caregivers can really encourage future initiative by teaching children to learn from their mistakes rather than feel guilty when failure occurs. So when we're thinking about this stage, we want to make sure that we are teaching families that, yes, children will become frustrated. An example might be coloring outside the lines in a coloring book. The child will become extremely frustrated. And we've got to teach parents not to belittle it. Like, oh, come on, it's no big deal. You just colored outside of the line, you know, get over it. Because to them, it's a huge deal, right? So although we do want to help them learn to cope, right, with failure, we also don't want to, you know, make it belittling that, you know, whatever the failure is doesn't matter, because it does matter a lot to them. So we want to throw the ball and throw the ball and throw the ball until they finally catch the ball and get to feel success, right? We want these kids to learn to maintain a sense of initiative, of course, without imposing on the freedom of others. Again, we're still working on impulse control and cooperation. We need to teach caregivers to avoid excessive criticism and focus more on teaching the child to learn from mistakes, and of course, always praising good behavior. Always praising good behavior. So, with that, we've got preschool graduation. And this is when all these lovely little preschoolers get to graduate and go on to school age. School age is 6 to 12 years old. That is when their height will increase 2 inches a year, weight increasing 4 to 7 pounds per year. And boy, oh boy, do they start to get more skilled at doing all kinds of things. This is a school age years. It's also referred to as middle childhood. Physiologically, it begins with the shedding of their first teeth. We call these deciduous teeth, and it ends at puberty. So deciduous means to shed at a particular time or season. So we all know the fun of when the teeth start falling out. We put them under our pillow and maybe we get a quarter or $1 or who knows, a toy, because it's, you know, a rite of passage. My teeth are falling out, my grown-up teeth are growing in. So there's steady, slow growth during this time. And we can see this little girl at the age of 6 losing her first teeth, and then we see her around her 12th birthday, all grown up and really a changed appearance, right, of all her grown up teeth now in place, and she has kind of moved into that preteen, going towards that adolescence. But in this stage, we're talking 6 to 12 here. Erikson in psychosocial development talks about industry versus inferiority. So kids in this stage thrive on accomplishments and praise. We see a young man here who ran in a race, who's very proud of his little medal that he was awarded for being successful by finishing the race, right? Need to be able to experience real achievement to develop a sense of competency during this stage. And so without proper support for learning a new skill, or if the skill is too difficult, they can develop a sense of inadequacy and inferiority. And so it's important, I think, for parents to spend time working with their children to learn how to do a difficult skills, you know, beading, making a bracelet, doing a craft, you know, building a model airplane, whatever it is. We have to make sure that whatever the skill is appropriate for the child's age. And then if it is a little more difficult, that, you know, a parent needs to help so that they can experience success. That is how they will learn to do it in the future. In terms of social interaction, school-age child usually prefer the same-sex peers. Girls tend to congregate together, boys tend to congregate together, and they really kind of view themselves in kind of a negative view. The boys and the girls are just kind of in their own little play groups, and they kind of have this little battle going on. Boys are better, girls are better. They have little rhymes that they use to say to each other on the playground about boys being this or girls being that, and it's kind of cute, but again, it's part of normal development. Piaget, our cognitive development theorist, teaches us about conservation. So children at this age have the ability to see objects. They develop during this phase, the ability to see objects or quantities as remaining the same despite a change in their physical appearance. So for example, we can see here that there's a lump of Play-Doh, and if the child or the parent, would take the lump and roll it out with a rolling pin, the child would be able to identify that, yeah, it's still the same amount of Play-Doh, even though it's now rolled out onto the table and it looks bigger, right? That this lump of Play-Doh is still the same amount of Play-Doh as this Play-Doh that is rolled out. And this is called conservation. They begin to understand another person's point of view. Imagine that. Shift focus from me to we. Hopefully, with healthy development, they're starting to care about the feelings of others. They're developing a sense of empathy, and they are engaging with other humans in the world in a positive way. So that is the end of our presentation for today. I hope you learned something new about child development. It's very important for nurses to be able to educate families that are coming into the clinical setting, how to anticipate different needs for children during different phases of development. So until next time, aloha.